Hi, my name's Craig from Slightly Unusual, the Comedy Illusionist, and we're specialists in weddings. On this week's vlog, I'm going to talk to you about the different types of wedding entertainment that you could have at your wedding, and I'm going to do an honest comparison between the different options that you have. Cool. So, I've talked about this on vlogs before, and I talk about it to people that I meet at wedding fairs, but hiring entertainment at your wedding is massively important. Bridal Magazine, they did a survey. They surveyed 5,000 brides, and it turns out 78% of brides said looking back at their wedding, they wish they'd spent more money on entertainment. And the reason's simple. It's because entertainment is the thing that people remember long after everything else has been forgotten. They don't think of the colour of the chair covers. They don't think of whether there were fizzy cola bottles on the sweet stand. They think about the entertainment, and that's what creates the wow factor at a wedding. Be honest, think about all the weddings that you've been to. Do you remember the colour of the chair covers? Do you remember the photo booth? Or do you remember the entertainment that they had on stage that night? Entertainment is massively important. But you know what? When you're thinking about your wedding, there's so many different options. What entertainment are you going to have? What entertainment should you book for your wedding? Well, in this video, in this vlog, what I'm going to do is compare the most popular types of entertainment that you can have at your wedding, and I'll give you the pros and cons for each one, hopefully to try and give you some advice as to which entertainment you should book for your wedding. Okay, so number one, wedding magicians, specifically close-up magicians. If you don't know what a close-up magician is, it's somebody who mingles around during the wedding, going from group to group, performing close-up magic for one group, then to another group, then to another group. Sometimes a close-up magician will do table magic, which means they'll go into the wedding breakfast and they'll go from table to table, doing the same thing. And you know what? It's a great form of entertainment. It's really interactive. It really builds the atmosphere in the room up. Everyone's clapping, everyone's cheering, everyone's laughing. And the other thing it does is it's a great conversation starter. It's a great icebreaker. There's a lot of people at your wedding that you've probably they don't know each other, and having a magician there, it can almost be a conversation starter, and it gives them something to talk about during the wedding breakfast when they're sat on tables with people they don't know. A few years ago, it was really rare to have a magician at the wedding. You hardly saw it, but these days, most magicians will have a wedding. Most weddings will have a magician at some point in the day. So it's a great thing to do, and also magicians aren't really that expensive compared to a band or something like that. So there's a lot of pros. There are, however, some disadvantages. So one of the first disadvantages is some people just don't like magic. Some people think of magic as cheesy and a bit rubbish. And, I've actually been at weddings where they've hired a wedding magician and, people just go, no, I don't want to see magic. I don't like magic. I really don't want to see magic. It does happen, not all the time, but, you never have anyone saying, I don't like music. It just doesn't happen. But occasionally you have people that don't like magic. It's not really a massive issue when you're doing sort of walk around, but it's something to be aware of. The other thing is, magic is an unregulated industry. There's no industry governing body that governs magicians. So what I mean by that is that the skill level and the entertainment level of the magician varies greatly. You can have a terrible magician who just comes along and just sucks the atmosphere at your wedding, and you can have an amazing magician. It's kind of, who do you pick? Well, my advice with that one is to make sure that you're watching show reels of the magicians that you're looking at, because you'll get a good idea of their style if you watch either a show reel or a full unedited performance, okay? The other issue with hiring a magician is it sometimes doesn't feel like a big deal. Because, when you've got a mix and mingle magician who's there for maybe a couple of hours doing the photos, if you've got a lot of guests at your wedding, you might not have even seen the magician. Some of your guests might not even see that magician. Now, it's not really a big deal, but it's something to consider when you compare that to, say, a band where it's the centerpiece and everybody's attention is on the band. You don't really get that with a close-up magician. So if you're wanting that massive wow factor, sometimes a magician won't deliver that. So there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of negatives. Now let's have a look at a band. I mentioned a band a second ago. Let's have a look at a band now. The advantage with a band is, and normally you'll have a band on in the evening reception. So during the evening reception, they will be performing maybe one set or two sets, and typically what happens is when the room gets turned round, they will set up their equipment. So as people walk in, you see all of the band's equipment set up, and they'll play throughout the night. Now, the advantage of a band is they can absolutely get people up and clapping and cheering. Having a good band at your wedding is so much better than a DJ, because it's live music. It kind of really, we talked about the wow factor earlier, it really gives people the wow factor having a band at the wedding. And there is no other type of entertainment that gets people entertained and up on their feet dancing than live music. It works really, really well. There are a couple of negatives though. The first negative is your typically band that you hire will be anything from a 3 to a 5-piece band. So they're going to have a lot of equipment. They're going to take a lot of room up, which can be an issue if you've got a lot of people at your evening reception or you've got a smaller venue. I've seen people where they've booked a band without actually considering the size of the venue, and the band's really struggled to actually set up. So that's something that you really need to consider. The other thing is taste in music is subjective. So what you need to do what you need to consider here is sometimes the band might be playing music that people don't like. So you want to make sure that you hire a band whose style of music is something that fits with what you want and what your guests are going to want as well. That's really important. And the other thing with a band is they tend to be very, very loud, okay? Like really loud, to the point that when they're playing, you probably can't hear yourself speak. Which means that if you've got people in the room that aren't particularly into music or don't want to listen to the band, or maybe you've got older guests that are kind of just getting drowned out by the loudness of the volume or something, or younger guests that just don't want to be there, that's a struggle, because now you're kind of stuck in a room where you can't really talk to each other because the volume of the music. So if you're in a kind of a venue where there's only one room, well, you're going to have to go outside, or you're going to have to find somewhere else to go, or you're just going to have to sit there in silence. So you kind of need to look at the guests that are going to be at your wedding and say, well, is a band appropriate for the people that are in the audience? That's something to consider. Then the next type of entertainment is a singer. Okay, so a singer is basically like a band, but there's only one person there. Normally they'll have maybe just a PA system and a guitar or something like that, and they'll sing just like a band, but one person. So a lot of the advantages of a band will also work with a singer. It's great to have live music, but the advantage of a singer over a band is they don't take up anywhere near as much space. It's literally, I've seen singers that are booked and have literally been slotted into the corner of the room. Now, when people book a singer, there's a couple of places that they'll book that singer to perform. The first would be maybe during the evening reception. The second would be during the wedding breakfast or something like that. Now, during the evening reception, the thing you need to consider about a singer is that sometimes they don't have as big an impact as a band. Because you've got to understand, with a band, it's like all of this equipment. You've got a drummer, you've got a keyboardist, you've got you've got somebody playing the guitar, you've got multiple singers. It's a really big deal. Sometimes a singer can almost get lost in the crowd. So that's something to consider. What do you want out of your wedding? Do you want that wow factor? Because a single singer on his own probably won't create the wow factor as much as a band would. So that's something you need to consider. There are pros and cons there. And if you have a singer during the wedding breakfast, well, sometimes if you've got a loud singer, it's not going to work because it's going to drown people out so they can't talk. So then you kind of think, well, okay, well, what's the best type of act to have during a wedding breakfast if you want music? And then you kind of go down the route of having a harpist or having like a quartet or a string quartet or something like that. That's very popular at weddings. But the problem with a string quartet or a harpist or somebody like that is literally they are just playing background music. So when you walk into the wedding breakfast, you see the harpist and you go, oh, there's a harpist, that's quite nice. But then through the rest of the meal, you're not there sitting watching the harpist. You can probably get the same sort of effect if you just played harp music over the internal PA system. So do you want to spend the money on having somebody there who you're spending a few £100s on to play music that's not really it's not like everyone's sitting there listening to it. So it's this sort of thing that you need to take into consideration. Then you've got a tribute act. A tribute act is basically the same as a band or a singer. The difference is a tribute act will be so for example, if you booked a singer, it might be, hey, he's going to come along in the style of Robbie Williams and dress and act like Robbie Williams and sing Robbie Williams songs. You might have a band that does the same thing, but they're dressed as the Beatles or ABBA or something like that. Now that works really well, and tribute acts are really popular. The thing you need to consider is if the guests in your audience don't like the Beatles, for example, well, that's something you need to consider, because you might like the music, but it might turn your guests off. Now, you could argue that this is your day, and if the guests don't like it, stuff it, and that's fine. That's the attitude you should take. But when you're booking a tribute act, you need to remember you're not going to have a big variety of music. It's going to be one style. The other thing is, these days, tribute acts are so common. They're like two a penny. You see them all over the place. And do you really want to have something at your wedding that just everybody sees all the time, or do you want to have something special? You don't really want to have, I've heard people talk about cheap tribute acts as a cheap copy. You don't want to have something at your wedding that people think of as a cheap copy, really. To be honest, if you're going down the route of live music at your wedding, I would suggest going for a band or a singer. I think that's the best option. Then you've got other walk-around entertainment as well, like caricaturists, and you have scissor art, where people cut up pieces of paper as silhouettes of the people that they're performing for, and contact jugglers and people like that. They kind of fall under the same banner for me as close-up magicians. So there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons. It's a great form of entertainment during the period of time where entertainment normally isn't appropriate, like during the photos, during the champagne reception, during tables and stuff like that. So the thing you need to consider with somebody like a caricaturist, for example, is they're not actually entertaining. They'll sit there, they'll draw the person that they're sitting with, and they'll give them that as a souvenir, but it's not an interactive experience. It's not like they're seeing magic and everyone's interacting together. So the advantage is that all your guests get to go away with like a picture of themselves, which is nice, but the disadvantage is it's not really entertainment as such. So it's something that you need to consider. And then finally, you've got a couple of other things. You've got a comedian. Having a comedian is becoming more and more popular at weddings. You need to consider the style of the entertainer, because sometimes blue entertainers that tell very risky jokes, that wouldn't be the sort of thing that's suitable for a wedding, especially if you've got kids there or it's a family audience. And then the other thing is, again, as with magicians, the quality of a comedian can vary very, very greatly. Some can be very good, some can be very bad. And just like music, comedy is subjective. What one person finds funny, somebody else doesn't find funny. A friend of mine hates Michael McIntyre. I love Michael McIntyre. If I was sitting in the audience watching Michael, I'd have a great time. He'd probably walk out. But it's the same act. So it's something you need to consider. You want to book entertainment that a lot of the time everybody will enjoy on some level. And then finally, you've got an illusion act. An illusion act is very different to a magician. Rather than walking around performing magic, they will normally do a show to everybody, and normally it starts off the reception. So when the room's getting turned around, the illusion act will set up all their illusions, and then as the evening guests arrive, they will sit down, and then the illusion act will perform to all of the wedding guests. It really gives the wow factor. I mean, that's a massive bonus when people walk in and see all these illusions laid out. It's wow, really? This I haven't seen anything like this before. And that's the other thing, there's very few illusion acts doing weddings, which means that it is very unique. And that's one thing that a lot of brides and grooms want. They want their wedding to be unique. They want their wedding to be different. Everybody books a band, everybody books a singer, everyone has a DJ. How many weddings have you been to where there's a big illusion act? And it's normally, if you get the right illusion act, it's very interactive. You can have people jumping up and getting involved, and you can do stuff like making the bride and groom appear, float the bride up in the air, saw the groom in half, stuff like that. So it's very, very funny, and it normally raises the atmosphere. Again, the thing you need to consider with illusionists, like magicians, is sometimes people just don't like magic, and it might turn them off a little bit. You would know your guests better than me, but that's something you need to consider. And then also, an illusion act takes up a lot of space. Okay, you need to have a big venue, which can sometimes be an issue depending on where you're getting married or where you're holding your reception. So, as you can see, there's a lot of pros and cons with regards to your wedding entertainment. My big piece of advice, I've got two pieces of advice here for you. The first is, go with whatever you feel right. Sometimes I meet brides and grooms and they second guess themselves. Well, I'm going to go for this entertainment. We don't like it, but our guests will. Or I'm going to do this, because it's your day. Ultimately, it's your day. You want to book the entertainment that you personally would enjoy. That's the most important thing. To be honest, if your guests and your family and your friends that are coming along, if they're friends of yours, they'll probably just get on board with whatever you're booking as well. So don't think about your guests, don't think about your family and friends, book the entertainment based on what you want to see and what you want to listen to. That's the first thing that I'd take into consideration. The second thing is, make yourself a list of all the entertainment that you're considering booking, and put down next to the list the prices that they're charging, and then make a list of pros and cons. cons? What's the pro of having this at our wedding? What's the con of having this at our wedding? Well, okay, let's have a band. Well, that's great, but that's not very unique. Everyone books a band. Okay, well, let's get an illusion act. Well, that's great, but and look at all the pros and cons and then come up with something. But you want to book your entertainments earlier rather than later, because a lot of entertainers, they get booked up, especially during wedding season. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong way of doing things. One wedding will be completely different from the other. But you know what? If I had to give you one big piece of advice, it's please make sure that you do think about your entertainment, because you don't want to be that bride and groom at that wedding where you've booked no entertainment and everyone's just sitting around just chatting to each other and there's no life in your evening reception. You want to make sure that this is a party that people will remember for the rest of their life, and the entertainment will help people remember it for all the right reasons. Guys, I hope that vlog helped. Like I said, if you want to find out more about what we do at Slightly Unusual, please get in touch. We can supply magicians and illusionists, so we can do everything from close-up magic all the way up to a big grand illusion show, depending on your needs. If you want a no obligation consultation, just give us a call on 0333 301 3001. And as for me, my name's Craig. I'll be more than happy to help you. Or you can visit us on our website at www.slightlyunusual.co.uk. And the other thing is, don't forget to check out this YouTube channel that you're watching this video on now. Have a look at playlists and click on weddings, and you'll see a whole bunch of live performances at weddings. Have a look at close-up and you see some live close-up performances as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We put content up here all of the time, and I look forward to seeing you next week with another vlog. My name's Craig from Slightly Unusual.